And you are listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show. We are back. I am your host, Jason Wally Waldron of Exitology, and I am joined here today with Joe Seetoo of Morton Wealth. And Joe, in a moment, we're going to share with folks how do you make the most out of, in most cases, the one most important transaction you're ever going to make in your entire life, your one shot. But before we do, can you remind folks how they can contact you before we dive
Yeah,
into this?
absolutely. You can feel free to email me, jc2@mortonwealth.com. Certainly, phone calls fine at 818-591-6219, or hit me up on LinkedIn, Joe C2.
Beautiful. For you millennials, you can probably text him before you call him, but a phone
That's probably
call,
true.
phone call always works, my friends. All right, so Joe, that's an old man Generation X joke, I guess, right? But
Yep.
Joe, you and I have both been involved to certain degrees. You're actually doing a state of business owner readiness survey in Southern California right now.
Yeah, I was able to form a partnership with the Los Angeles Business Journal,
Okay.
which has like 80,000 readers, mostly business owners and C-suite executives. They have a sister company, the San Fernando Valley Business Journal. And then my involvement with Exit Planning Institute, which we're both members. And as you know, they conduct these surveys that are really meant to assess owners' transition readiness. And so we started one about three weeks ago. We have over 300 responses
Great.
in a very short period of time. And so we're really excited to gather that information, prepare a white paper for the community, share the results. My hope is too that it was about a 15-minute survey for owners that it triggered some like honest self-reflection of like where they
Totally.
are, and
Yep.
that maybe there's a little bit of a call to action for them, so that, I mean, at the end of the day, what we all want is better outcome for owners. I mean, that's the number one thing we're all trying to get.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I love that you're making that happen out there, and I really, just as a fellow SEPA, I appreciate your contribution to the
Thank you.
overall community.
Exactly.
Last year in Colorado, I should say the local chapter, the Rocky Mountain Exit Planning Institute, partnered with the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, and put out all of the surveys, and it was a really interesting process because we did hear from business owners, to your point, where even just going through the process for 15 minutes was good for a self-reflection, just kind of find out where you are in that process. And we found that taking people through that process is really important. That's why we offer a free diagnostic session with people, right?
Yeah.
Because let's help you just kind of understand where you're at. But a couple of things that stood out to me that were interesting, and almost kind of sad, was 72% of business owners in Colorado, at least, are waking up every day without a purpose in their life.
Oh my
And
gosh.
right, and
Oh, that
and
kills.
it totally, and it speaks to what you were talking about. Implicit in that means that 72% of business owners are running away from stuff every single day
Yeah,
instead of working towards something,
towards
right?
something.
And so there's that, and then kind of funny, but also kind of not, is that we also found out that CPAs and folks like yourself,
Yeah.
advisors, are often, in most cases, actually trusted more than the spouse.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
so, uh, yeah, and so with that, I'd be curious. Let's maybe take it down. So a business owner starts to reflect. They start to say, well, maybe I want to find purpose, right? Maybe I want to, move beyond this stage of my life and make the most out of this very important, the one shot that I have to sell this business. How do you approach that through
Yeah.
your strategist perspective? How do you approach that just generally? Let's walk people through that.
Yeah. So I developed an offering for the firm called the Strategist offering.
Okay.
That is a flat fee retainer based model for business owners. Because a fundamental issue is, right, at least in the wealth management industry, there's a misalignment between assets under management, which is, what we manage for, how we bill, how we make a living.
Right.
And for the business owner, their single biggest assets of the business. And they oftentimes don't have the liquidity to work with an advisor. And so I flipped
Yep.
that script around and said, hey, we've got to meet them where they're at,
Yep.
let's come up with an offering that is flat fee and then really what we do is first we start with what we call the triggering event, which is similar to what we learned in exit planning, which is an assessment is get essentially a current valuation of the business, coupled with an assessment of how where is the business, and also what's the owner's personal readiness. Now, that assessment for us, because we're not business consultants like you, is just a high level diagnostic around what are the red flags. It's more of a lifestyle business versus transferable enterprise. And we'll look at sort of the 8 common areas of the business, right? The operations, the sales, the marketing, the finance, the legal, the HR, to at least get a high level diagnostic. So when we go through that, with the valuation is nowhere near what they need, then we can bring in somebody like a Wally to help increase the enterprise value.
Yeah, that's I love that you're doing that, because it's what happens when you take somebody through the process you just talked about, right? From a strategic perspective, is you're helping that business owner understand what we find is one of the biggest challenge. Here's what your business looks like as part of your overall wealth picture, first of all. So the business owner can actually get some distance and look at it as part of their portfolio, right?
Correct.
So then secondly, if it is a situation, Exitology, is a very simple concept. Build your business and grow it so that you can exit for 3x the value it was before. And so, now there's a bunch of different ways that happens in real life, of course. But we know, and the marketplace knows, that if a business is growing, then you have a lot more options, right? And I was asked this the other day, actually, and it was, so why are you guys so focused on growth? And it came back to that favorite word that we both have for our business owner clients. And I said, because if you're growing, you have options. That's it. That's the only reason. If there was a different way for me to get you more options, then we would go in that direction, because that's our true north, right? So as you're taking people through the Strategist offering, what does the whole journey look like typically for these folks?
So that initially starts, and then really where we start to spend a lot of time is on quantifying the wealth gap, right? Okay. And so what we'll do then is really dig in and build a financial roadmap ahead of time, right? Again, so we can ultimately look at where they're at today on their spending, what are the net after-tax proceeds once we get the valuation and the CPA's input, and start to calibrate different scenarios around what their options are, understanding what the valuation is, and then what their real exit options are. We're also typically bringing in, we have an in-house estate attorney that's looking at the estate plan. We want to make sure that's buttoned up. Obviously, we're bringing in the CPA as well.
Yeah.
Once we've educated the owner on sort of what are their, and obviously it's very collaborative.
Yeah.
What does the owner really want? Are they looking to close that wealth gap? Do they need to? Do they need to have a Wally in their corner helping them increase the enterprise value of the business? Or are they in a position, I'll share with you, like, for example, right now I'm working with a client who is likely to do an internal transfer to his key employees.
Cool.
It's building the transition team. In this case, obviously, we got to bring in legal counsel. I've already have a business banker involved that's looking at funding options.
Yeah.
And but essentially it's building a transition team, both internal, which could be the key players inside of the business, and the external as well, which would be the consultants like yourself, us. Yeah. It may be their own existing estate attorney, their CPA, an investment banker or business broker, commercial banker potentially. Some cases, a family consultant, if it's a family generational transfer.
Right.
Maybe an ESOP specialist. So,
well, I think this really speaks to the importance of ultimately tracking everybody's progress against that transferable value metric, right? And because of course that's what we're tracking against on, because you're defining the personal wealth gap on the one hand, then we're coming in and looking at the profit gap and ultimately that value gap, right?
Yep.
And when you put all of those numbers together, then look what happens. Clarity can be achieved, and then people can make those decisions as to what they want to do about that situation.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right. It's got to be collaborative. You need a team. No one advisor can do all of this. Yeah.
So, not to be too crude about this, but you're in here getting all of this new data with the owner readiness survey, and you're in there, defining the wealth gap. That story that I told, where I said there's 40 people in the room, and 2 years later there's one person that's happy. How far off is that from when you go in and define these wealth gaps?
Yeah, well, I think we'll see when the survey's done if the latest survey that you're talking about is uh, is correct. Um, I think candidly, I'm seeing more as my practice has migrated, right? Because up until the last couple of years, a lot of the time we're brought in post exit,
Oh,
right? We're in the
yeah.
middle of it. So um, certainly the clients that have met our minimums as a firm, I think have had reasonable exits.
Okay.
And not that we only have business owners, we've had a number of just regular high net worth families doctors, lawyers who've saved money.
Yep.
But I suspect that you're right on, right? I mean, those studies are, I think, reasonably accurate. But
Yeah.
and again, I point to the client that again, somebody I helped with the transition over the last year. I actually started working with them kind of mid-transaction.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny because afterwards, about 6 to 12 months afterwards, he was struggling.
Yeah.
He was bringing in a coach to help him work through some things that ultimately, I think, got him out of that sort of funk that he was feeling that you were pointing to.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, hey, we're wrapping this up here today. Joe, it's been a real honor and pleasure to have you here. Folks, the MortonWealth.com, you might want to check out their website. They believe in empowerment, empathy, enjoyment. They're ethical. They embody excellence, and of course they provide engagement. And so I really appreciate you being on the show here today, Joe.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Folks, you can always go to Exitology.com, and we will have the show notes from this particular show up there. And you can always join us for a live executive briefing where we're live. We will answer any question that you have under the sun about any of these concepts. And until next time, thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Exitology Unlock Your Profits, Unlock Your Potential show.